So today everyone I'm showing you how to fully service a Vauxhall Combo 1.7 diesel. This one hadn't been serviced for like nearly 100,000 miles. It's got nearly 380,000 miles on the clock. And yeah, you can see through the video how bad a lot of the filters are. So here I'm just doing the Sump Plug, which is I believe a T40 or a Torx 50, I think it's a Torx 40. And I'm just taking off the sump plug. I'm looking for the copper washer in there, but I couldn't feel it. And then later on I find that the copper washer is non-existent. It's only about 4 pieces in the oil itself, so I had to replace that. So as that's draining, I'm literally just cleaning up the sump plug. Next I'm onto the fuel filter while that's draining. I put in a Mann filter because Crosland don't do one. There's 2 seals to this, one in the bolt and one big ring one. These go in dry, so for the fuel filter you literally just have to undo that Torx 25 or Torx 30 bit up the top, and you don't have to do any of the electrical connections, and you don't have to undo the fuel pipes themselves. The tools I'm using today I'll put in the description, but this is a 3/8 Milwaukee ratchet. The beauty about these is that you can just use them as a ratchet or with the electric themselves. It's 12 volt. So here I'm just taking off the fuel cap itself, looking to see what the seal is like and how to get the filter out. I'm getting a rag just so any fuel doesn't spill onto the floor, but it becomes a bit of a hindrance at the end. Also I've seen that the fuel sensor wire is exposed in there it is, and the protection isn't on there anymore, so I'll deal with that later on. So I'm just looking how the seals come off. They come off quite easily in the end. Sometimes they can get a bit stuck. You have to use a bit of leverage, but that's the main seal. I thought there was another little seal in there, but there wasn't. So now it's just a matter of getting the filter out, and I had to use a pry bar / big screwdriver in the end because I couldn't just pull it off because it's on a little retainer. I was having a bit of an issue getting out initially because it's full of fuel as well. And the beauty about these elements and not the actual canisters is that you don't have to pre-fill them. It just goes straight in, and then you start the car / van afterwards. So I'm using the screwdriver, taking out the filter. This filter was absolutely horrendous. You'll see the difference. I'll show you the difference in a minute. So now just let all the fuel drain off into the holder itself, and there's the difference in filters. You can see how that's fuel as well. This car had been standing for a while before it came to me, and the filter was full of bits, so it has been doing its job. So here's the new seals. The little one goes over the bolt, just so no fuel comes up the bolt and through the threads. You'll see my thinking face a lot through this video as well. So that just goes straight in and plops and goes straight into its little retainer. And there's the big seal. That seal just plops straight on the top, so it's nice and easy. Just sits quite nicely in the casing, and then just put the cap straight on. Just do up the Torx 25, Torx 30. There's not really a Torx spec for this. You just do it up and nip it. You don't over tighten any of these, otherwise you stretch and shear them. They go through a lot, especially through the years. So I'm just literally just taking up the slack and then just nipping it up. This one takes a little bit more because it's got a longer shank on it. And that's the beauty of these ratchets, like I said earlier, is you can use them as a ratchet, not the electric themselves. This one is the Milwaukee extended ratchet in the end. Forgot to mention that at the beginning. And there you go, nice and nipped up. And there I made a boo-boo. I dropped my little retaining pin in my socket has fallen out. So now I'm using my surgical disgorgers, pliers, whatever you want to call them, to get it out. Get the little bit from the casing. It only fell on the casing itself, it wasn't too much of a hassle. And then I'll just end up cleaning up the wiring themselves. Make sure there's nothing catching, nothing's falling off, no fuel pipes are off. Just have a general good visual inspection. Here's me just sorting out the wires. All it is a bit of conduit. Just come off, so I could have zip tied it back on and held it, but it seems pretty solid. It's just where someone's touched it before. Next is the cabin filter. So it's just got this little retaining piece of material up the top, and then you have to take off the weather strip. I'm just having a little look because I've not done one of these before. It's quite easy though, quite straightforward. But it's a bit of a hassle getting the scuttle panel off. But that didn't have to come off at all the way. It's just a quick time lapse of getting it because it was a bit of a long process. Just finding the right tools. I had to take off a T25 T30 bolt again, and there's a few wires above there. So yeah, it's just a bit of a hassle really, and that it came off quite easily. And you'll see the state of this new one. The customer stated that there's bad airflow into the cabin, and you'll see why in a sec. Here you'll see why. For this car especially, I'm just using Crosland because it's just a budget runaround for a customer. He doesn't want to spend any money on it with Mann filters or Bosch filters, so I'm just using Crosland. It's literally just a little runaround just to get him around for the time being. Now just putting the weather strip back on because I put the new pollen filter back in. That was a bit, I didn't record that because it took a little while. And then next I crack on with the, I'm just putting on a little bit of trim so I don't forget it in the long run. And then I crack on to the air filter. You just have to make sure the weather strip seat is correctly all the way down, otherwise you'll get water flow through. So the previous person who ever touched this before me had rounded off all the screw heads. So I never use electric tools on screw heads on cars anyways, because 9 times out of 10, or most of the time, you end up rounding heads anyway. So I always use a little stubby or a normal size screwdriver. On the right side you get PZ bits and PH bits, 1, 2, 3s. One of the clips on this airbox is broken anyway, but at the moment I'm just taking off the mass airflow section because it was in the way from the final retaining screw, and then I could properly get my weight behind it and get it undone. The key to rounded heads is patience and not the slip. The more you slip, the more you round, of course. So there's the old air filter. It's an old Bosch air filter because it's got that foam material underneath. I just did a quick freeze frame there to show you how bad it was. And I put in a new one. I was trying to rush a little bit and tried to not take off the clip on the airbox, but in the end I did, to get the new one in. Then put the new one in, put all the retaining screws down at all 3, and it was perfectly safe. You just have the 3 in there. Just make sure they're nice and snug again, don't over tighten them. You see my thinking face again. It was -1 out there today, so it was pretty cold. and then just put on the Jubilee clips again. Now I'm using the little 1/4 inch Milwaukee ratchet with a 7mm socket, just to do up the Jubilee clips. Once I put this all together, I see that I've twisted the air intake hose, so I had to retake off the back one and redo it again. No trouble, it was just where it was twisted a little bit. And then finally it's the oil filter, which is at the back of the engine. It's a 32mm socket, which I used an impact socket because I didn't have a normal chrome one, with a 1/2 inch drive and a 1/2 inch ratchet. You tend not to use a electric ratchet on this either. And it was done up very, very tight. It's only meant to be torqued to 25 Newton meters, and it was done really, really tight. So here I'm just taking it off. Just made sure the drip pan underneath was over it, because otherwise it will make a right mess on the floor because it drips a fair bit. And then I get my rag ready just to pull it on, just so I don't put oil all over the customs engine bay. And once again I'm just using a Crosland oil filter. It has 3 seals on this one. Also I found that the old filter is very, very stuck on there. You'll see the state of the old filter as well. It was horrendous. The oil was about 3 times thicker than it should have been. It looked like it'd been in there 100,000 miles. That's when we think the service was last been done on it. And as you can see there, with the seals, it's always good to have a little right angle pick. You just got to be careful you don't rip the seals or stab the seals. Once you do it a few times you'll get it, but here you can see it's stuck, so I had to physically take off the whole unit out from there's my thinking face, out from the actual the cut end of it. I'm just taking off the seals there just to try and help it a little bit, but in the end I do end up taking the whole unit apart, cutting the filter off and then putting the new one over. So there's the smallest little seal off, and the slightly bigger seal just above the filter itself. Always use a pick. It just makes it nice and easy. You don't damage the seals if you do it properly. Don't stab the seals. And there you go. I had to take off the whole unit in the end. It was a bit of a pain, but nothing a knife couldn't deal with the filter with. Just reassemble the unit, nice and easy. Just make sure it clicks in and swivels and rotates and moves freely and it's not seized, like I do there. Just take off the bottom biggest seal, which just stops all the oil coming out of the holder itself through the threads. And then when you reassemble this element, because this is a filter element and not a casing, which you get on some older cars and some other cars. Sometimes I prefer the element, but sometimes then again most of the time I prefer the element. Sometimes the casings themselves get stuck, so a lot of the time the element's easier. But when you reassemble it, like I was saying, you always assemble it with the oil, a fresh glove, cleanest glove, with the oil going put in, just so the seal doesn't split and crack and like basically start leaking as soon as you reassemble it. Because as soon as you tighten that seal, if it's dry on the oil seals, it will split. So on the bigger seals I tend to just use my hands. On the littler seals I use a little pick just to help me get the seals around. Just showing you there how it slots in. So that's the big seal, goes into that gap. And just make sure it's well lubed up with oil, or oiled up, just so it doesn't split, because then you got to get another seal and do the whole process again if you split it. So it just shows you there's two sizes of seals, and just make sure you get them on the right way around. So the slightly bigger seal goes on first, and the smallest seal goes on the top. No, just use a pick to help me direct. Just make sure you don't stab it like I said before. And then you can just direct it all the way around and it goes on quite nicely. Just takes a bit of practice if you've never done it before. Like I do there, just swivel the unit and it's on. Make sure it's oiled up again, and the same again for the third one. And in the process of the message, I've got the whole thing, the message rings and asking me to go and pick up horsey stuff, horsey foods. So then I just put it on the speaker and reassembling it. So just make sure all the seals are still all oiled up well. The message is gone, I can finally get on with the job. And now to put the new element on and stick it back in the car. This car ran so much better with all the new filters. It was struggling to start because of the old fuel filter. It starts a lot better now, it cranks over a lot. It seems like a bit of a lazy starter really. When you put in these oil filters, always put them in hand, screw them in by hand so you don't cross thread them because they're only plastic and they will snap quite easily. So just hand tighten it, and then I just got the ratchet and just still only hand tightening it here. It's just a bit tight with the new seal. And this isn't tight at all. Like, I'm not torquing it at all here. There you go, just nipping it up. The rule of thumb is with, it says 25 Newton meters, but I can't even get my torque wrench in there. Was just to literally hand tighten and quarter turn, and that's good enough. Now I'm just putting in the sump plug. As I said before, the sump plug washer was absolutely gone, so I'm putting in a new sump plug washer, and like you can see here, I'm not over tightening it, otherwise you'll just snap the sump plug as well because it's only small. And I didn't have a spare one. A lot of the time I do just put a new sump plug in. Finally, new 5W30 Mannol energy oil. Once you do it a fair amount, you can just pour it in without a funnel. It takes a bit of practice. And once again, it is just patience. I used 4.5 litres here, and I found that it was a little bit low just before I started the car, so I put in an extra 0.1. So in total I used 4.6. Just patience so you don't spill it all over the engine though. Over time you'll get used to how oil flows and you don't even need to use a funnel. Make sure every last bit's in. And then that's how you fully service an engine, or a Vauxhall Combo 1.7. So here I'm just doing my inspection. Whenever I do every car, I always look around and see if I can find anything. And here I found a loose battery. Didn't have a battery clamp on it, and the rocker cover gasket was leaking oil, so I've got to quote and fix that. Also just checking the coolant to make sure the coolant's the right colour. And then eventually I went around the car, made sure the brake disc, brake pads were acceptable, tyre tread levels, and that's everything. So thank you very much for watching. Subscribe for more, and see you guys later.